it's not a sprint. This is a marathon, and it takes time and it takes a collective, and we can't do it alone. And so just be conscious of pacing yourself, giving yourself the grace and love that you need to do this work, and you'll see the change that you seek.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of changemakers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
We have talked to many certified B Corps on this podcast, and it's always so great to connect with these individuals because you feel like you're part of a community of like-minded organizations. As you may know, KidGlov is also a certified B Corp, and that's a status that I am very proud of. It signifies our commitment to better business and to creating a more fair and inclusive economy. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain a bit and talk to someone at the very organization that is working to create all this change. So stay tuned as we talk about how B Lab is helping organizations address society's most critical challenges, how inclusivity and equity play into that process, and why they are so important. Hey everyone, this is Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist at KidGlov. Welcome to another episode of the Agency for Change podcast. Today's guest is Hugues Sygney Jr. He is the Director of Racial Equity at B Lab US and Canada, which is a leader in economic systems change. They create standards, policies, and tools for business, as well as certify companies known as B Corps who are leading the way. Hugues, I am a big fan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Just came back from Champions Retreat, revitalized, restored, energized. I'm feeling all the great feelings.
I love that. So for people who don't know, the Champions Retreat was a big global virtual and in-person event that a lot of B Corps attended. Any key takeaways from that event that you want to share?
Wow, so many takeaways. I think the biggest one for me is just the level of humanity that showed up at the conference, the willingness, the understanding, the empathy, the love, the grace that everyone came into the conference wanting to learn, unlearn, and really want to galvanize the movement in a way that really brings the system levels change that we've been advocating for.
That's fantastic. Let me reel that back just a little bit too. Hugues, could you explain to our listeners a little bit more about B Labs, what B Labs does, and who it helps?
Absolutely. And that's a great question to start off with. So B Lab is a leader in economic systems change. B Lab Global creates standards, policies, tools, and programs that shift the behavior, culture, and structural underpinnings of capitalism. We mobilize the B Corp community towards collective action to address society's most critical challenges. Our global community includes over 5,000 B Corps in 77 countries and 153 industries and more. We also have a B Impact assessment, which over 100,000 companies have leveraged and used to manage their impact. And so B Lab US and Canada is one of 6 global partners of the global network. We foster and mobilize a growing community of people and businesses working towards a more fair and inclusive economy in the United States and Canada. And within the United States and Canada, we have over 2,000 B Corps that make up the US and Canada community.
Wow. So I'm very proud to say that KidGlov is one of those 5,000 B Corps.
Yes.
And I am on record as saying that when we took the B Corp assessment, the impact assessment, it was quite a rigorous assessment. This isn't one of those assessments where you just pay the money and fill out a form and get it. It was a lot of work, but the great part about that is it really made us think and it made us stretch and grow and get better as an organization. So thank you for that. We're going to talk a lot more about B Labs, but before we get into that, I'd love to just talk a little bit about you. Is there something about you that you'd like to share that maybe we wouldn't find on your LinkedIn profile?
Yes. Well, I am the son of 2 Haitian immigrants. that migrated here to the US back in 1980. So I love to start with that because the origin story really speaks to the character and who it is that I am as a leader. One thing, and actually, I should say several things you will find on LinkedIn, is that I also reside in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
I've been residing in Brazil for the last 10 years, conducting field research on socioeconomic disparities due to racism. And in my time in Brazil, I've come to learn Portuguese. And so I also speak 5 languages fluently.
Wow.
Yes. And I love skydiving. And so I would just pin those three as some of the most unique attributes about myself that you would not find on LinkedIn.
I would say A+ on all very unique. And I think that's fantastic. I'm going to ask you not to answer the rest of the questions in Portuguese because I am not fluent, if that's all right.
No worries. I have Italian for you, some Spanish, some French, if you choose to take it in a different direction.
I'm in trouble in all of those departments, so we better just stick with what we've got here. So I also understand you have your own podcast. Can you tell us a bit about your podcast? And we'll make sure to link to it in the show notes of this episode.
I appreciate that. Yes, I actually started the podcast at the height of the pandemic in 2020. The podcast initially started after the death of Kobe Bryant. Which I felt like most of us was feeling this overwhelming feeling of sadness,
Yeah.
and really wanted to speak to that and understand why was it that for folks who never met Kobe Bryant and his daughter, who rest in peace, felt so connected to the stories, felt so connected to the impact it's had in society and our culture.
Right.
And I recognized that I wanted to create a space for men of color to be able to feel safe and speak to some of the vulnerabilities and feelings that they were feeling. As I also recognized as a Black male that I was going through some feelings that I needed to speak to someone about in order for me to understand the changes that I was going through. And so the podcast really focuses on building camaraderie amongst men of color and really creating a platform and providing them with this platform to support each other and uplift each other and primarily hold each other accountable as we continuously often feel, there's not this level of community and, really wanting to find ways to bridge our men of color together in ways of healing, embracing, and supporting each other.
Hugues, that sounds fantastic. If somebody wanted to find that podcast, what is the name? How would we find it?
Absolutely. I should have started off with the title. Huh?
So that's why you need marketing people.
Indeed. So the name of the podcast is Black Man Speaks. You can find it on all major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the major platforms. I'm actually in the process of revamping the podcast. So I haven't actually launched an episode since the last year. And that was because I wanted to center myself and focus on my wellness as many people were going through so much and recently have been feeling fired again as I join different conferences, meet so many different leaders, and also have been doing so much shadow work where now I'm in a better place mentally and emotionally where I can get back to recording. So really excited to officially launch our next episode in 2023.
I'm glad to hear that. And one of the things I love about podcasts is you can pick up and get something out of them at any time. So I love that they're recorded and available for people. So, all right, Hugues, let's turn back to B Labs. I'm really curious, what life or work experiences helped prepare you for your role with B Labs?
Yeah. Oh, that's been a journey. And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with a colleague at B Lab about this conversation, my origin story, if you will. My origin story actually started in climate justice. Shortly after the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, I decided to go to Haiti to support family that was still residing in Haiti that was affected by the earthquake and folks that I grew up with. Though, being born and raised here in New York, I had a very unique experience in terms of growing up as a child where I would go back and forth to Haiti and the US. So I had this understanding of where home for my family was. And so going to Haiti and supporting the community and providing Haitians with the platform to advocate for themselves, as there were so many different nonprofits within the country, but yet none of those resources were getting to the Haitian people. And so I decided to partner with an organization, IET Soleil, which in English means Haiti is the sun. This amazing leader within the community of Cahifu, which is a province in Haiti. It's about, I want to say, 20 kilometers away from the capital of Port-au-Prince, had converted his home into a library where youth and leaders, folks within that province, could go into this man's home, which was a library, and get access to resources that would support them in their workforce development, opportunities outside of the country in terms of study abroad programs. And this home was destroyed during the earthquake.
Mm.
And so we wanted to raise funds to help rebuild this home, this library, so folks could have a place to go to as folks were still trying to figure out what was next for the country.
Right.
And so fast forwarding, we were able to shoot a documentary in Haiti where we provided, again, this platform to the Haitian people, uplifting their voices. And we leveraged that documentary here in New York to raise funds and capital to help rebuild that library. Our community was super generous and supportive, where we were able to meet our goal and help rebuild this library. And so after this amazing initiative, this call to action, if you will, I was offered an opportunity to begin and spearhead programs in Brazil. And so shortly after Haiti, I decided to move to Brazil and started working in São Gabriel, which is a small comunidade, which is a community in Minas Gerais. And the work started really taking shape. It started being led by youth within the community, advocating and supporting other leaders within the community of what it is that the community needed. And you will start to see the common theme here in terms of, the approach that I took, which is centering the voices of community, learning from community, and understanding the solutions they already knew to be true, but needed the resources in order for that impact to happen. And so by going through this experience and journey, if you will, that led me to do some amazing work throughout the Caribbean. So that also led to work in Jamaica, in Cuba, throughout Latin America, and recently returning back to the United States and doing some amazing work here in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, but also in Canada. So it really shaped the future of where I would end up, which is B Lab.
What a journey. What a journey. That is truly an around the world trip for you. So as director of racial equity at B Lab, for anyone who is maybe unfamiliar or doesn't quite have the words to describe the concept of racial equity, how would you explain it?
Yeah, and this is a really great question to ask. And I love to call folks in terms of, sharing the true understanding of what is racial equity. And I think once we start with that baseline, we get to have a true, authentic conversation. And so through my lens, racial equity is a just and fair inclusion into a society in which all people, immaterial of their race or ethnicity, can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential.
Yeah.
In the US and Canada, for example, racial inequity is largely perpetuated by structural racism. And structural racism refers to the historical and ongoing political, cultural, social, and economic policies and practices that systematically disadvantage people of color, especially the Black community, disproportionately.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. How do you guide people through the process of crafting racial equity strategy through the lens of B Lab?
So uniquely enough, when I joined B Lab, the first thing I asked was for some data points, some understandings of like what retrospectives have been done to truly understand where the gaps and the challenges were for folks. And I learned that that is the area we needed to continue to keep diving deeper. And so the process actually was a lengthy one. What I wanted to do was I wanted to start communicating and connecting with the ecosystem to learn what were some of the challenges that people were having when it came to racial equity and JEDI related work. But most importantly, where were folks really having an interest? Because again, racial equity and JEDI can be so robust and so general, where I can really start from that place and then be able to kind of work backwards. And so as I started to develop the process in crafting our racial equity strategy, the first thing that I needed to do was do research. And so to answer your question, the first was research to truly understand the levels of where folks were at in our ecosystem, followed by connecting with community leaders that partnered or partners currently with B Corps are having certain challenges in terms of bringing this level of impact that both parties are committing to. And so I played somewhat of a convener role, a connector role, where I bridge C-suite leaders with community leaders to truly understand and create a level of dialogue. And so that level of engagement is the second phase process, where now we're talking and having dialogue. And then the understanding of what needed to be done was to truly center those voices by truly understanding, in order for B Corps and leaders to be able to move the needle forward in terms of impact, centering those voices of those who are impacted, who are within those communities that are considered to be frontline communities, needed to be part of the process. This could not happen post a conversation in a boardroom, in four walls, within an office, and then disseminated within the community in terms of what is needed. That process needed to start authentically from the beginning, from the inception of the idea to the inception of the implementation, if you will, of where and what it is that is needing to be done within that community. So I've been able to truly craft a robust strategy, which comprises of 4 pillars. The learning journey, starting again on self. So the learning journey comprises of 4 tiers. The 101 level focuses on mindset shift, truly doing the shadow work that is needed before diving into community work. The 201 level is supporting organizational shifts, so now truly implementing anti-racist frameworks within your organization. A 301 level, which is now the community level engagement, in terms of now you've gone through these 2 tiers, you're confident, you're courageous, you understand how to engage with community, so you're not inflicting more harm than good. And then your 401 level, which is now societal level change. Now we're talking about legislation. Now we're talking about really galvanizing and collective action groups to come together to hold those accountable that's in power. So that's the learning journey, followed by storytelling. And so storytelling is where I find to be one of the most unique and most beautiful ways of bridging both demographics together, because now you're centering the voices and hearts of those who are not just living within these communities, but are part of the solution. And so we uplift those voices and leaders by allowing them to tell their story versus reading this data metric or tool, from a report. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is moving beyond DEI statements. Racial equity and JEDI is more than diversity, equity, inclusion. It's truly centering justice, and how do we really bring equity in a way that allows folks to understand that by diversifying your board, by having a few folks interact with certain philanthropic initiatives, it doesn't suffice in what's currently happening in the world, in our communities. Being able to move beyond DEI statements is truly to enact this level of change within the organization, but also within community, by understanding what it means to fully immerse yourself in that experience. And so moving beyond DEI statements look like, for example, Grayson Bakery's inclusive hiring policy, where now folks are able to go through the door without even filling out an application or providing a resume, and just putting their name on a sign-in sheet. And if they get a call, they get the job. And Grayson Bakery have seen some most some of the most amazing turnaround in terms of staff retention, generation of revenue, and the ability to create this culture for staffers and workers in a way that feels like they have a place of belonging and they see where that trajectory could be in terms of the future. And so that's moving beyond DEI statements. And the fourth pillar is redistribute of power to frontline communities and community-based organizations. So now that is really giving those resources, trusting and building those relationships with community leaders and members by giving the support and resources that they need with no strings attached, with no, wanting something back in return, allowing for these leaders to bring the true change that they need within their community because they've been doing the work.
Yeah.
They are part of those communities. And so their racial equity strategy comprises of 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars came to be based on the approach that I've mentioned in terms of what needed to happen first, which is research, diving into conversations both with C-suite leaders and community leaders, and truly being able to center those voices of the frontline leaders and community members.
You've said so many things here that have intrigued me. I really love the learning journey. I love how it starts internally and then grows, because that is the way authenticity happens. If you just jump to the end, you can't be authentic about it. And I also love how you connected centering the voices, which I've heard you say several times. And the first time it caught my ear, and the second time I feel like I understand it more and more. And then you connected that with storytelling because, being in marketing, I've seen all the research about how you can have facts and data, but people don't remember facts and data necessarily. Exactly. And they don't, their hearts aren't changed. Their minds aren't changed until they hear the stories. And then the part you shared about Grayson Bakeries just reminds me of something in my personal journey. And I know this episode isn't about me, but I think it's an example in that there are so many things those of us who have been in business for a while have been taught. And you hear that Grayson Bakeries is hiring people just by calling them because their name was on the list. And as a business owner, you think, what? That's against everything I was taught. It's against everything I was mentored. It's against what I learned in school. And then you start to wonder, if I did something like that, could it work? Or would that just be crazy? And part of, I think, our journey at KidGlov and part of being a B Corp is kind of that tension between questioning, this is what we used to do. But if we always do what we used to do, we will never have a different outcome, right? And having the faith and the belief that trying something different is going to lead to different results. And so I would have to say we have some experience in that trying different things leads to different results. So thank you for all of that.
Absolutely. And if I can just throw in one more point there is, Grayson has recently just partnered with IKEA. And IKEA will be adopting this model because they've recognized the benefit not only from an organizational perspective, but also to the community and society. The Body Shop currently adopts this model, and so this is revolutionary. This is a different way of doing business, and that's what the B Lab, the B Corp movement is all about.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So as you think about companies that are going through the impact assessment and the B Corp process, are there things in this area that you see them struggle with the most?
Yeah, I think it depends on the organization. I think depending on the organization, you see where there's some areas of challenges and struggle. But some of the overall and general themes of challenges for B Corps are particularly always around the JEDI component. And so that means the worker voice and engagement, fair and living wages, and really being able to understand how do they center and implement racial equity within their organization as, just let's calling this in. This is relatively new for many businesses. This is not something traditionally that's been front and center for companies. And so the struggles vary, but I would say around JEDI and racial equity is where I'm seeing a lot of challenges for companies. Hence how and why I joined B Lab to really be able to support B Corps go through this process and journey.
Right, absolutely. Now it seems like I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, Are there any high-level suggestions for first things for making meaningful progress when it comes to being more diverse and inclusive?
The first thing is to acknowledge there's a problem. I
Yeah,
think it's really
right.
just getting back to the basics and just first and foremost is acknowledging there's a problem, being able to process where the origin of the problem started. So this way we could understand, the organization can understand, what are the resources needed to help them start to understand and dissect that problem. Once that understanding is met, then you move into identifying those key experts that can truly support in this process. This learning journey, it's like this saying that we have, and it's an African proverb in saying that, it takes a village
Hmm.
in terms of raising a child, but it also takes a village in, creating some long-term solutions and having the impact that an organization is seeking to have by holding themselves accountable to identify who those leaders are that can support them, who those experts are that can support them. It takes a village to help solve that problem. And I think once that is truly the main focus, now is creating an action plan that you're holding your staff, you're holding your C-suite leaders, you're holding your board accountable in order for those changes and action plans to truly take effect.
Yeah. I want to take this, to talking a little bit more about becoming a B Corp, because I'm going to say part of KidGlov's journey to becoming more aware, more inclusive, a better company, I think is a big part of that is the B Corp impact assessment. If you were going to say to companies who are kind of questioning, should we do it? Should we not? What are some of the top reasons a company should go through B Corp certification?
I mean, there's a million reasons, but the first reason I would say it's good for business.
Yeah,
It's reimagining what capitalism looks like. It's recognizing that we can still make money at the same time taking care of our planet and
right.
others and the community, right? And I think there's a way of doing that, and there's a level of love and grace that we can insert into this way of practice that really allows us to thrive. I mean, take Patagonia, for example,
Yeah,
right? Like, I mean, what other example is there currently that shows what a true leader, looks like? I mean, here's an organization that was thriving, that has some of the best products in the world,
right.
and leadership just decided to give it all away. And not away because they've recognized the benefit it will have to those nonprofits, and those nonprofits, the
Absolutely.
impact they have in the community. So it's like a ripple effect, if you will. And I think this is where and why joining the B Corp movement makes sense, because there are leaders, there's non-traditional practices and ways we can move the needle in the right direction for our children, our grandchildren, and for a future that we may not see, but they are going to still live in, that we can really be part of that movement that changes the way business has been conducted.
That is fantastic. I think for anybody who has a question of can this work, look at Patagonia, right? Successful company, great products, growth. I mean, well-known brand, obviously,
Absolutely.
great example.
And one more thing, Lynn, I would like to say is Patagonia is a prime example, but a lot of people don't know this. A majority of our B Corps are actually medium, small size businesses.
Yeah,
So these are like smaller companies that are championing what it truly means to change capitalism, what it truly means to center frontline communities and those impacted the most disproportionately. And I think what it also shows is that this movement is relatively new, but it's full steam ahead.
yeah,
We have, again, Patagonia, but there's the Body Shop, there's Warby Parker, there's Ben and Jerry's. I mean, there's KidGlov. I mean, there's
yeah.
so many different amazing organizations that are, again, in so many different levels and sizes, but really embody what it is to be a role model in this work.
Right, right. I'm going to have to say, I don't on a day-to-day basis have interaction with the leaders of Ben and Jerry's or Patagonia or the Body Shop, but I do have interaction with a lot of leaders in the mid-size B Corps and really enjoy that. We've interviewed a number of them on this podcast, and there's just a certain like-mindedness, a certain camaraderie that you have in people who want to do business. They all want to have successful businesses, but they want to do it in a way that also takes care of people and communities
Absolutely.
and the planet. So I think that's fantastic. Are there any major, when you talk to people, are there any major misconceptions you see about becoming a B Corp that we want to dispel?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that shifting from shareholder governance to stakeholder governance can negatively impact revenue generation. And
Yes.
this is just not true. I mean, the CEO of BlackRock, for example, put out a statement and saying like that is the mindset shift that we're in now. That is where we're going towards. That is what the organization is focused on. And again, I think this notion that when you focus on other people, on the community, on the planet, it affects your bottom line, it affects revenue generation, and that's just not true. I think when you, in fact, take into account all of these different things, you're more aware of and conscious of what it is that how is it that you conduct business and the services you provide and the products that you create. And I think when we take into account all of those different things, we've seen companies see more revenue generation now than ever before they were B Corps. And so, this notion that shifting from, again, shareholder governance to stakeholder governance negatively impacts revenue generation is it's just complete false. And I would encourage B Corps, those inspired folks who are interested to become a B Corp, it's in the research. You can easily look into some of this research on any of the companies that are current B Corps that are either new into our movement or just recently became certified, to see like how they are seeing some serious progression in a positive way when it comes to revenue generation. So no, shifting from shareholder to stakeholder governance, it's not bad for business. It's great for business.
Yeah. Change can be scary, but definitely worth it. So,
Indeed.
all right, you're right in the middle of this movement. What are some of the trends that you're seeing either for business or for equity and inclusivity work in the next 5 to 10 years?
One of the trends, and I'm loving this trend, is that we're shifting the conversation from climate sustainability to climate justice. And
Yes.
that for me is one of the most beautiful shifts, because as we know it, the planet is melting, right? The polar caps
Yeah.
is melting, and
Yeah.
there's no way to sustain the planet. And what we have to do is just completely be conscious of our role within it, those who are impacted by climate change, and how do we ensure, if we're talking again through a racial equity lens, that justice is at the center. When you take a community that is impacted by climate change, and yet they're the last to receive resources, they're the last to receive power, they're the last to receive support, that there's an inequity there that really impacts the community on a larger scale that is not seen at first, but it really is felt afterwards. And so, that is one of the trends that I'm seeing. Another trend that I'm seeing is we're shifting this conversation from DEI to JEDI, again,
Yeah.
justice being at the core center, and that for me is a great shift, because it's more about just diversifying and thinking that like, oh, I have a couple of folks of color in my team, and so I've checked off this box, right? It's really centering those who are impacted disproportionately and due to the inequities of the systemic issues we have in this country, but also in the world, right? And just wanted to make this also point. I think when folks think of racial equity, JEDI, it's a U.S. focused problem, or this is a global problem. Once we have that understanding and perspective, I think we could approach the work differently. I think we could understand what needs to be done differently. And so, and going back to the trends, again, the DEI to JEDI, and also this level of less extractive engagement and more of a learning and listening engagement. And I'm loving this shift that folks are having, especially those in power. For example, we're working closely with a group of white powerful CEOs and executives that comprises of the WMRJ group, which is White Men for Racial Justice. Here is a group of white men that are leaders within their organizations and have been on a learning journey for over the last 5 years. This community comprises of over 200 B Corp leaders.
Wow.
And we've partnered with them on the learning journey pillar that I've shared with you earlier on to talk about how white men needs to understand their whiteness first before they dive into this work. And here's a group leading that work, spearheaded by this group and providing the community. So this way, when that uncomfortable feeling, when those levels of tension comes up, you have a community that can call you in. And again, this is just a community of all white men, nothing else. And there's equity advisors that hold the white men accountable. And so, there's a shift and there's a trend of real leaders that are not people of color wanting to do the work. And we have the results, we have the examples within our ecosystem. And so some of these trends are very positive and some of these trends are still being analyzed. And I think a lot of it will show in time whether, the programs that are created and those who are part of these communities really moving the needle in the right direction. And I'm really optimistic for the next 5 to 10 years.
You know what? Talking with you makes me optimistic for the next 5 to 10 years too. So I think that's fantastic. This has been so inspiring. I'm going to ask you my favorite question next. Everybody who listens to Agency for Change knows that I am inspired by motivational quotes. And you have said so many interesting and inspiring things today, but I'm hoping you can give me a Hugues Sygney original quote.
Oof, I have a few of those. I would say, enter your heart, listen to those who are truly impacted, recognize that we could always continue to keep learning, hold yourself accountable, recognize that it's never too late to shift your mindset, have grace and love with yourself because this work is not easy.
Thank you for that one.
and I think the last one would be, it's not a sprint. This is a marathon, and it takes time, and it takes a collective, and we can't do it alone. And so, just be conscious of pacing yourself, giving yourself the grace and love that you need to do this work, and you'll see the change that you seek.
Wow, pure gold. Thank you. Thank you for that. So thank you. So how can our listeners find out more about your work and more about B Labs?
Absolutely. So we have an amazing racial equity video that you can find on YouTube that shares out our 4-pillar strategy and providing examples on how to activate on each of those pillars. You can also check out my LinkedIn. You can find a lot more information there. You can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I love to connect with folks, and I will be intentional in reaching out, providing you with a calendar invite and just finding some time for maybe a virtual coffee or tea.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And then you can also go on our website. You can go to our B Lab US and Can website, where you'll also find some additional resources to support you in your journey. And one of those resources that I would love to uplift really quickly is our Racial Equity CEO Blueprint. This blueprint was created in partnership with our partners of CREA. So CREA is Corporate Racial Equity Alliance, and that group comprises of FSG, Policy Link, Just Capital, CapEQ, and B Lab US and Canada. And so we've developed this robust blueprint to provide a North Star, a how-to guide, if you will, on how to achieve racial equity. And there are step-by-steps of what exactly is and how it is to be implemented. And then the last plug I would love to implement is our learning journey is actually slated for launch in February 2023. And so if you're interested in joining this learning journey that you're hearing so much about, you can go on our website, you can fill in the intake form, and we can have you join our learning journey starting again in February on the 101 level. And that will be in partnership with WMRJ. And so, for example, if you are a white male and you would like to join us in our learning journey, you'd be going through the WMRJ learning journey. Okay. We are also partnering with Be More with Anu. If you are non-white male and you are looking to join the learning journey 101 level, you will take the learning journey that is in partnership with Be More with Anu.
Fantastic.
So the learning journey, again, slated for February 2023. And the idea is to continue having folks join. And the CEO Blueprint is one of those resources you can literally go on our website right now, download, and see how to start building and achieving racial equity within your organization.
Fantastic. Hugues, we're going to get links to all of those in the show notes on KidGlov.com as well. So people can
Wonderful.
have everything from your LinkedIn link to the video to the resources from the website. So thank you for all of those.
With
so
love.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. As we wrap up our time together, is there one most important thing that you would like our listeners to remember about the work that you're doing?
Yes, I would love listeners to know that it's literally been only 11 months since I've been in this role. And so that means our racial equity strategy has only been 11 months, but it's to show how much we've accomplished within 11 months. And, I would love for our listeners to continue to remain with me on this journey. Reach out to B Lab, reach out to me and ask questions. There's no silly question. There's no stupid question. It does not matter where you are in the journey. If you are recognizing that a shift needs to happen, this is the moment for it. And so listen to that instinct and join us, because you will have a community that will support you along the way.
That is fantastic. Hugues, I fully believe the world needs more people like you, more organizations like B Labs. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today.
Absolutely, with pleasure and love. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing as well, and providing the platform to share out some of these amazing resources.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KidGlov.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.